Let's take it straight to Supriya Srinath, who caught up with Kaushik Basu, the Chief Economic Advisor. Straight to that then.
It's not terribly optimistic. I mean, there are other forecasts which are going a little bit higher than that, but it's on the top end of the range that you see. 7.6, given the way India had performed from 2003, for instance, certainly from 2005, is just indicating a slow climb back to where we were. The reason why it is slow is that our savings and investment rates, which were the major drivers of the economy, they have slowed down, they've dropped a little bit, just a little bit. Still, by global standards, it's very good. I don't expect these to pick up immediately.
So what are you betting on?
So the savings and investment rate, we have the figure for for only 10-11. It comes with a big lag. For 11-12, they may go down a little bit more and then begin to pick up. Therefore, the growth rate picks up from 6.9%, goes back to 7.6%, which is still below capacity of what India was doing. So it's a slow comeback, but we expect that the year after that, and there we are on the optimistic end, we believe that India's growth rate will go up to 8.6%.
That's again an ambitious target, but many people believe manufacturing isn't doing spectacularly well. Investments haven't picked up. Government spending is perhaps going in non-productive things like subsidy burden and all of that. Where exactly then are you being optimistic for? I mean, given this very gloomy scenario.
Yeah, we are talking 8.6 is 2 years down the road, not immediately. 7.6 is a pickup from where we were.
8.6?
And 8.6 where we go is the wastage that you're talking about. You know, on this, India's always been very, very wasteful on this. So it's not something that we are doing new that we are wasting. It's a dreadful thing we should not do, but we've been wasteful for the last 20 years in terms of these subsidies. So I don't think that's going to really cut into the performance. Manufacturing, which you pointed, indeed that has been the big worry. Because in the last quarter, manufacturing growth rate was down to 0.4, which means it's close to zero. But there are other, what we call high frequency data, like PMI index data, which are beginning to suggest that we are bottoming out and this is going to pick up. Our manufacturing growth used to be around 8%, 9%. So if it begins to go back up there, you'll see the growth being picked up. And the study of high-frequency data, the export sector, makes us believe that there will be a slow pickup. So we are not very optimistic for next year. Slow pickup to 7.6%.
A very quick question, and again, this is really coming in from your critics. I think it's only fair to put the question that's coming from critics is that the survey has made a fleeting reference to fiscal consolidation. It doesn't really give a roadmap for one. You have said spending needs to be curbed. There is a need for fiscal consolidation. Where will the fiscal consolidation come from?
The roadmap you'll get tomorrow with the budget.
But,
let me give a serious answer to that.
Yes.
Since the economic survey gets tabled before the budget, you will see any previous years, the economic survey usually does not get into the details of that because of reasons of privilege. Yeah.
Okay, a very quick question also on the fact that you focused a lot on oil this time around. You have said that petrol deregulation, which has technically happened, may have happened in spirit, not really in action. It is still, and let me quote out your survey, it says nods and winks of the government is what it is still dependent on. You have suggested a fixed subsidy on every litre of diesel. Is petrol the big culprit? And do you think policymakers should worry more about crude oil, should worry more about a very opaque subsidy regime that they have here in India than anything else?
We do worry about that. And let me separate out the petrol and the diesel. The petrol, it is decontrolled. But what we realized after this, and so the survey, that discussion is a very serious discussion. When you decontrol something where the sector is basically state-run, which is what oil marketing is, it's all the state-run. Market price is not a very, very meaningful thing. So you have to think a little bit harder as to how you decontrol it. We've done it for petrol. It's working, it's moving up and down, but not as well as you want to. Diesel, we haven't even done that. We held back on that. So taking lessons from petrol, we talk about how we now want to move on diesel, given that we have got some lessons from the petrol deregulation. And what the survey talks about is actually something quite novel in the Indian context. It's been used across the world, is where you give every litre a fixed subsidy so that now when prices rise up and down, consumer prices will rise up and down. So people begin to live with fluctuating prices.
Which is why, Dr. Basu, I'm going to ask you this question. You spent close to 3 years in North Block. You will soon be calling it quits. But do you not know that diesel is perhaps politically the most sensitive tool? It may just remain in the realm of good academics and may never really take on. Do you fear that?
It is possible. It's possible. And there are countries before us which tried to deregulate diesel and then stepped back because it was just impossible to do it politically. So it's possible. If it happens, I think it'll be sad because it will create other kinds of pressures on the government's policy and the fiscal space. But you know, I mean, you don't run a big country on one particular policy. So even if it does not happen, if we can get petrol better tuned and functioning better, if we can make moves on LPG, kerosene of the kind that are already being talked about, yes, one little bit wouldn't be done, but other things will.
You're an optimist, and I'm presuming that, you know, many more people will be an optimist like you out there. But just a very quick question then on inflation and the whole price management. You know, a very aggressive RBI policy did ensure that inflation does come into manageable limits. At 6.5% to 7% is what you're talking about by the end of this fiscal. But how much of a party pooper do you think global oil prices can be, and should one really begin to worry about that?
Not too much. Global oil prices can affect our growth more than inflation. It will have an effect on both, but my fear is that since we tend to shelter our consumers, we will not allow that to filter into the consumers, so consumer prices sufficiently. So the effect on inflation, if global prices rise, yes, there will be some impact on inflation. What worries me more is, given that we tend to be protective, that is going to translate into slowdown of growth. So as I've been saying in various places, that our growth forecast makes use of certain assumptions on international crude prices, and of course the forecast can go wrong if those numbers look very, very different.
We only hope to keep our fingers crossed. But a quick word then also on investment. The survey is a little silent on how to boost investment. You have said it's critical to boost investment for growth, but you haven't really gone. I agree, like you will say, it's the prerogative of the finance minister. He would perhaps announce it tomorrow. But just to quickly talk about investments, that's a big concern as well. I mean, India Inc. is just not investing. There are many reasons to be blamed for this, and I will talk to you about some of those. But considering investments aren't taking off, what can the government do at this point in time? And it's very unprecedented. Your economic survey also talks about corruption as an issue. It also points fingers at lack of coordination within the ministries for infrastructure projects to take off.
Yeah, that point is a bit of a technical point. So right. It's not lack of coordination between ministries.
But let's just talk about investments then.
Yeah, but that is also to do with investments. Investments very often need a kind of government push and a nudge. So it's a kind of PPP kind of exercise. And then there are always these risks that if you get into a PPP agreement and the project goes sour, it comes onto the government's fisc. So there are tricky problems involved over there. Small steps, detailed steps, I cannot go into, but the most important thing over here is if you can get the mood of the country improving. A lot of investment is to do with animal spirits of the entrepreneurs. So you want to get the mood up over there. My hope is that with inflation beginning to slow down, it's not happening rapidly, but it is moving in a direction of slowing down, and I expect our April inflation to be distinctly lower than the previous month, and then it will hold. Sure. Hopefully the mood will turn, and as the growth picks up, as the PMI numbers also show that there will be a turnaround in the mood. Once that happens, these investments, which have been major drivers for India, should begin to improve.
You've dedicated considerable space in your economic survey to the issue of corruption, and you said how it does erode growth and also erodes confidence at one level. I would want you to touch upon that, and at the same time I would want you to talk about, there are political compulsions that always override economic decisions. I mean, a railway fare hike, I know you will not get into the details of it, after 10 long years, is not something that any common man on the street is objecting to, but political parties are. So can we live away from realities like this?
No, we can't live away, but one very important thing over here is that if the common man and the common woman in the street, if they begin to understand these things a little bit better, that a policy which puts money directly into your pocket may not be the best policy. In the long run, you get cheated by policy. That education is extremely important. And here I'm turning it back to you people. If really the media, the newspapers, we play a role in ordinary people understanding that an immediate price hike, yes, it pinches us that moment. But in the long run, there are certain price hikes that you need. I think that politicians who respond to popular opinion will take better decisions. So this economic literacy, spreading it out, is also a very, very important part of this
You were out of policy making, you got into policy making, you will soon be bidding it a very good bye and perhaps going back to what you do best, which is academics. But
I do this also pretty well. Yeah.
I agree. I'm complimenting you. Yeah. But are you a little disappointed at how much politics overrides the economy in India?
No, only because I didn't drop down here from another planet. I mean, I've lived here, I've read the newspapers, I've lived in the US for several years.
That's right.
And these debates are very, very hot debates, and each decision is very hard. You read the policies in countries where the government is more all-embracing, like China, yes, decisions take place faster. But in those countries, I feel there's a big risk. Things move very, very smoothly for a long time, and then suddenly they can begin to stall when the politics come to roost. Whereas in a country like India, yes, there's always this murmuring problem, and there are days when you feel very disappointed by this. But on balance, no, I feel we are in the right system and things will work out.